The Kink Switch is a full chromoly BMX bike designed for street riding. It comes with a free coaster, 2 pegs, 0 hub cards, and double wall rims. It's a pretty solid choice if you have the budget for it and you're interested in riding street. Stay until the end of the video, because at the end of the video, I'm going to give you the honest truth on this bike and tell you whether or not I think it's a ripoff or if it's worth the money. Sometimes this gets me in trouble, so make sure you stay till the end. There are 5 common questions that everybody has about the Kink Switch, and those are: how much does it weigh? The Kink Switch is going to weigh 27.9 pounds. How much does it cost? The Kink Switch is a $649 BMX bike. Everything on this bike is fully upgradable and fully customizable. It comes with 2 nylon pegs, and it comes with a standard set of Mission U brakes. Let's talk about the color options and the size options that are available in this bike. There's only one option for the Kink Switch, and it's a 20.75 inch top tube in gloss gravity gray. There are close to 100 different BMX options in 2023. If you want my help finding the perfect one, request a free bike recommendation. The link to do that is up here or in the description. All you need to do is put in some basic information about yourself, and I'll find you 3 bikes that are perfect for you. It's gonna save you a ton of time. So let's talk about the sizing of this bike and figure out if this bike is the right size for you. The Kink Switch comes with a 20.75 inch top tube, and this is going to be best for riders who are between 5'9" and 6 foot. If you want to understand how the sizing of BMX bikes work, Google Dougsterbob size guide, and my size guide will come up that explains it a little bit more in depth. The other 4 geometries on the frame determine how the bike is going to handle and how it's going to feel. Some bikes feel more snappy and some bikes feel more mellow. The geometry on the Kink Switch is a little bit different than the Kink Gap, the Kink Launch, the Kink Curb, and the Kink Whip. It's got a 75.5 degree head tube angle, a 9-inch standover height, a shorter 12.75 inch chainstay, and an 11.6 bottom bracket height. The 75.5 degree head tube angle is a little bit more responsive than you will see on most complete bikes. This just means that the front end is going to be a little bit more snappy and a little bit more responsive. The average chainstay length is 13 inches, so 12.75 comes in at a little bit more responsive. This is half an inch shorter than the Kink Whip. The steep head tube angle and the shorter chainstay together bring that wheelbase in so that it's not such a long wheelbase. Overall, this bike is going to feel very snappy, and it's going to be good for technical riding versus high, flowy, fast riding. The parts on this bike also have geometries that are going to affect the style of the bike. Let's talk about those geometries and see how that affects the style. The forks come with a 26mm offset. The handlebars are 9 inches tall, and we don't know how wide they are, but I'm going to guess they're about 30 inches wide. The stem on the Kink Switch is a top-load stem. It's got a 32mm rise and a 50mm reach. This bike has a 25:9 gear ratio, meaning the sprocket is a 25-tooth sprocket, the driver is a 9-tooth driver, and everything on here is on the right-hand side, making it right-hand drive. The Kink Switch comes with a free toaster instead of a cassette. One thing that stands out with the geometries is the 26mm offset on the forks. We just talked about the 75.5 degree head tube angle, the 12.75 inch chainstay. Now this 26mm offset is technically average, but it's about 6mm shorter than the offset on the forks on the Kink Whip, Kink Gap, the Kink Launch, the Kink Curb. And so it's a little bit different than what we've seen in a lot of Kink's other bikes. This 26mm offset brings the front wheel a little bit closer so that it's more under you and it gives you a more snappy feeling. The quality determines how long your bike is going to last and how it's going to hold up to certain levels of riding. It's always recommended to buy the best quality that you can afford. The Kink Switch has a full chromoly frame, meaning all of the tubing is full chromoly. This is much better than the high tensile steel that you'll see on other bikes or the tri-moly that we found on the Kink Gap. The forks on the Kink Switch are also full chromoly, meaning the steer tube and the fork legs are made from 4130 chromoly. The handlebars on the Kink Switch are full chromoly 4-piece handlebars. It's going to come with full chromoly 3-piece A-spline crank. A-spline cranks are okay, but they are generally heavier and more chunky than 48-spline cranks that you could add as an upgrade on this bike. The Kink Switch comes with Mission Mylar double wall rims. These rims have a pin seam instead of a welded seam. So let's talk about the parts package and talk about the highlights and the lowlights of this bike. The Kink Switch has a Kink Bold HRD stem, aftermarket Kink hemlock pedals, fully sealed bearings, 2 nylon pegs, and a stronger 510 chain. The only lowlight on the Kink Switch is the 2.4-inch Kink Sever tires. These tires are heavy and they don't grip that well in park. So let's talk about how this bike scores in quality compared to the other bikes, and then determine the weight limit for this bike based off of the quality. All this information is on the Dougsterbob app, which is a free app for you to use to figure out which bike is best. It determines things like a weight limit, a park score, a quality score, a value score, and a lot of other things. You should be using this to research your bike. The Kink Switch scores a 7.1 out of 10 in quality, which gives it a weight limit of around 200 pounds. The quality of this bike is full chromoly, and over 200 pounds you're going to be fine. The only thing I really want to stress is expect some of the components to break a little bit sooner. For people under 200 pounds, you can buy this bike and cruise on it without much worry. If you're around 250 pounds, just keep an eye on things like your pedals, your sprocket, your cranks. Make sure they're not tweaking, make sure they're not bending. Certain bikes are going to be better for certain types of riding. Let's talk about what type of riding the Kink Switch is best for. Remember, all the parts on this bike are fully upgradable and fully customizable, so you can replace parts to make this bike better for a certain type of style if you want. The Kink Switch scored a 6.44 in street, a 6.92 in park, and a 4.1 in dirt. It's going to be good for street because of the responsive technical geometry, the 2 pegs for grinding, and the free coaster for cool fakey tricks. It's also good for park for that same reason. That responsive geometry gives it a good edge for doing technical tricks and technical riding. It has holes built in for a gyro tab if you want to put a gyro on there and make this a park machine. Because of the steep geometry, I just think this bike's going to be too responsive to have a good time on dirt. So if you bought the Kink Switch or you already have the Kink Switch, these are the first 3 upgrades that you should make on. The first one is get rid of those heavy Kink Sever tires with something that grip better and weigh less. Upgrade those 8 spline cranks to aftermarket 48 spline cranks, and then buy some hub guards. I love that it comes with pegs, but I wish it came with hub guards too. So I'm a pretty big fan of the Kink Switch, and this shows up in a lot of different bike recommendations. For $650, it's not necessarily overpriced. I'm bummed about the price increase, but it's a fair value for that price. One thing I want to mention though is that you can get very similar quality on the Kink Whip and save $100. The only reason that you would want to buy the Kink Switch over the Kink Whip is if you really want a free coaster and you need that 20.75-inch geometry. If you're between 5'9" and 6 foot and you don't want to go up to a Kink Whip XL or down to a normal Kink Whip, then the 20.75-inch top tube fills a good gap here. If you really want a free coaster, then the Kink Switch is the only one you should get because the Kink Whip doesn't have a free coaster. And if you don't care about the free coaster and you'll fit fine on a 20.5 or a 21-inch bike, the Kink Whip is very, very similar quality and it's going to save you quite a bit of money. Again, nothing against the Kink Switch, but there really are only 2 reasons that you should buy the Kink Switch over the Kink Whip. It's a big price increase with not much quality change. Now, YouTube thinks that the video on the screen is going to be a good video for you. Let me know in the comments what you think about the Kink Switch and which bike I should review next.